The moment my father slid those thick legal papers across the dinner table toward me, the entire dining room in our Bryn Mawr house fell silent. Not the cozy silence of a family meal, but the heavy, suffocating kind that makes your chest tighten. I was sitting there, surrounded by the people I had supported for 20 years, and suddenly everything felt wrong. My name is Mariah Jenkins. I had spent 2 decades sending money back home from my job in Philadelphia, every paycheck, every bonus, every sacrifice to keep this family afloat. And now, on what was supposed to be a simple family dinner, my father Larry looked me straight in the eye and said, "Cold as ice, Mariah, we need to talk about the future of this house. Your mother and I are getting older. We need to simplify things. Sign these property transfer agreement and quitclaim deed papers so we can transfer full ownership to me and your sister Kelsey. No more complications later." He pushed the folder closer. I opened it slowly, reading every line the way I always do with anything important. The words stared back at me, full transfer of any interest waiver of rights, no future claims. My mother Carol kept her eyes fixed on her plate. My sister Kelsey sat across from me, head down, silent. The room was so quiet I could hear the clock ticking on the wall. I picked up the pen he had placed beside the folder. I signed. Page after page. Calm. Steady. No tears. No shouting. When I finished, I slid the signed documents back toward him. Before anyone could speak, Taylor Vaughn, my best friend since college and my attorney, stood up from her seat as a guest. She walked to the table, pulled a thick brown envelope from her bag, and placed it directly in front of my father. "Before this dinner ends," she said evenly, "I think you should look at this." My father took the envelope. His hands shook slightly as he opened it. The color drained from his face. My mother covered her mouth with her hand. I looked straight at them both and said nothing. "You ever pour your entire life into your family money time trust only to have them turn around and treat you like you were the burden all along? Have you ever sat at that table, pen in hand, knowing the truth was about to explode? Drop your story in the comments below. Have you sacrificed everything for family and got betrayal in return? Tell me where you're watching from, like this video if it hits home, and share it so others can see they're not alone. Let's keep going. The real part is just starting. Let me go back 20 years because you need to understand how it all started before you can see how it ended. I was 22, fresh out of college with a degree in computer science. I landed my first real job as a junior developer at a mid-sized software firm in Center City, Philadelphia. The pay wasn't huge, starting salary around $45,000 a year, but it felt like a fortune compared to student loans and part-time gigs. I rented a small one-bedroom apartment in the Graduate Hospital area. Nothing fancy, but it was mine. The commute to work was a quick SEPTA ride and life felt full of possibility. Then the call came from Mom. Dad Larry had lost his job. The manufacturing plant where he worked for 25 years shut down unexpectedly. The company filed for bankruptcy, and hundreds of people, including him, were let go with minimal severance. At 51, he was too young for retirement, but too old for easy rehire in a shrinking industry. Bills piled up fast. The mortgage on our old house in Bryn Mawr, the one we'd lived in since I was a kid, was suddenly underwater. The bank sent notices. Mom cried on the phone, saying they might lose the house if they missed another payment. I didn't hesitate. I told them I'd help. Temporarily. I'd send what I could each month to cover the mortgage payment and basic bills until Dad found something new. The first transfer was $300, most of what I had left after rent and groceries. I wired it through the bank app, added a note. "Love you guys. This is just until things get better." They thanked me endlessly. Mom called back in tears. "Mariah, you're our rock. We don't know what we'd do without you." Dad got on the line, voice thick. "Thank you, sweetheart. This means everything." Even Kelsey, who was 19 and in her second year at community college, texted me, "Thanks, sis. I promise I'll pay you back when I graduate and get a job." I believed her. I believed all of them. So I adjusted. I stopped going out for drinks with coworkers. I packed lunch every day instead of buying. I took on overtime shifts whenever they were available, late nights, debugging code, weekends on call. Every extra dollar went straight to the family. Within a few months, the transfers grew to 500, then 700. Dad was job hunting, but the market was tough. He took odd jobs, handyman work, driving for a delivery service, but nothing stuck. Mom picked up part-time at a local store to help, but her income barely covered utilities. I drove out to Bryn Mawr most weekends, about 40 minutes on I-76 when traffic wasn't bad. The house looked better already. Fresh paint on the porch, new curtains in the living room. Mom hugged me tight every time I walked in. "Look what your help did," she'd say, pointing to the fixed roof or the new refrigerator. Dad would pat my back. "You're saving us, kid." Kelsey would show me her textbooks, promising she'd finish strong. I felt proud. Deep, bone-level proud. Like I was holding the family together. I told myself it was temporary. A year, maybe 2. Once Dad was back on his feet and Kelsey graduated, things would even out. I'd stop sending so much, maybe even save for my own place, or a down payment someday. But the months turned into years. Dad found sporadic work, but never anything stable enough to replace my contributions. Kelsey finished community college, but instead of getting a full-time job, she took time off to figure things out. She moved back home, and the house expenses stayed the same. My salary climbed, promotions, raises, bonuses, but so did the amounts I sent. $1,000 a month became $1,500. I upgraded to a slightly bigger apartment in Philly, but still lived frugally. No vacations, no new clothes unless necessary. No dating because, who had time or money? I never asked for receipts or questioned where the money went. Why would I? They were family. They needed me. And every time I visited, the house was nicer. A new deck in the backyard, updated kitchen cabinets, even a small hot tub on the patio. Mom said it was smart investments to keep the property value up. Dad said it made the place more comfortable for when they got older. I bought it. All of it. I told myself I was the responsible one. The one who made it out, got the degree, got the job. It was my duty to give back. So I kept sending. Month after month. Year after year. I didn't buy a house of my own. I didn't start a family. I prioritized them. And for a long time, that felt right. As the years went on, the dynamic shifted in ways I didn't fully recognize at first. The phone calls started changing. What used to be grateful updates from Dad became emotional pleas. One evening, after I casually mentioned that my rent had gone up and maybe we could scale back the monthly amount for a bit, he broke down on the line. His voice cracked as he said, "Mariah, family is your responsibility. Your mother and I are getting old. What are we supposed to do if you stop helping? We raised you. This is what kids do." He sobbed openly, the sound cutting through the speaker like a knife. I sat on my couch in the dark apartment, staring at the wall, feeling the weight settle deeper in my chest. I told him not to worry, that I'd keep things the same. Mom took a different approach. She didn't call as often, but when she did, her texts came late at night. Short, sad messages that landed like quiet accusations. "You don't love us anymore, do you?" One read, after I suggested skipping a month to catch up on my own savings. Another, "I guess we're on our own now. We understand." No emojis, no warmth. Just those plain words that made me feel like the worst daughter alive. I'd stare at the screen for minutes, guilt rising, until I transferred the money anyway. Kelsey was more direct. She didn't pretend. One afternoon she called while I was at work, voice casual but edged. "Sis, you're making good money now. I'm really struggling. Can you spot me a little extra this month? I need it for stuff." When I hesitated, she added, "Come on, you have no kids. No mortgage of your own. It's not like you're hurting." I sent the extra $500 without another word. Then the social media posts started showing up. Kelsey's Instagram filled with photos her at the beach in Florida smiling in a new bikini, her holding shopping bags from high-end stores in King of Prussia Mall, her posing next to a brand new convertible with the caption, "Living my best life." I scrolled through them during lunch break, stomach twisting. When I asked Mom about it gently, "Kelsey seems to be traveling a lot lately," she replied smoothly, "Oh, that's her own savings, honey. She worked hard for it. Don't worry about her." I wanted to believe it. I told myself I was being paranoid that my little sister deserved some joy after tough years, but the doubts kept creeping in. There was the time Kelsey called in tears saying she was sick and needed money for doctor visits and medication. She sounded so weak on the phone that I wired $2,000 right away plus more the next week. Later, I saw her post a story from a rooftop bar downtown laughing with friends, drink in hand. No mention of illness. I asked Mom again. "It was just a bad flu, but she's better now," Mom said. "She didn't want to worry you." I nodded to myself in the mirror, forcing the suspicion down. Family doesn't lie about something like that. They wouldn't. The guilt became a constant hum. I started losing sleep, waking up at 3 a.m., heart racing, replaying conversations. Work suffered. Deadlines slipped because I was distracted checking my bank balance obsessively to make sure I could still cover everything. My boss noticed. "Mariah, you seem off," she said one day. I smiled and blamed stress. The truth was heavier. I was terrified that if I stopped sending money, the family would fall apart, and it would be my fault. I borrowed once. Just once. A small personal loan to cover a surprise car repair for Dad. He said the old sedan broke down completely. I paid it back slowly over months, interest eating into what little I had left for myself. But I never told them. I didn't want them to feel bad. Every visit to Bryn Mawr felt like walking into a different version of home. The house was beautiful now, landscaped yard, fresh siding, a new fence. Mom would hug me and say, "We couldn't have done this without you." But the hugs felt shorter. The conversation stayed surface level. Dad would mention bills casually, almost testing if I'd offer more. Kelsey would show off new clothes or gadgets, then change the subject when I asked how she afforded them. I kept choosing to believe. I told myself the extra expenses were necessary, that Kelsey was just young and figuring things out, that Mom's sad texts were from worry, not manipulation, that Dad's tears were genuine fear, not a tactic. But the cracks were there, growing quietly. Deep down, a small voice whispered that something wasn't right. I pushed it away every time, because admitting it meant admitting I'd been used, and that hurt more than the exhaustion. The doubts that had been simmering finally boiled over when I couldn't ignore the evidence anymore. Kelsey's online boutique launched quietly at first, a sleek Instagram shop selling designer-inspired clothing, accessories, and home decor. The photos were professional, her modeling the pieces in what looked like high-end studios, captions boasting limited edition drops and fast shipping. Orders poured in, or so it seemed. Then came the stories of her business trips to New York for sourcing, photos of her in luxury hotels, spa days with friends, even a weekend in the Poconos for team building. The tags showed places like the spa at the Hotel Hershey or high-end salons in Rittenhouse Square. Meanwhile, Mom posted about her well-deserved self-care routines, weekly facials, massages, new outfits from the same boutique. Dad shared pictures of himself on the golf course with new clubs, captioning them retirement hobbies, even though he wasn't retired. I scrolled through it all during a late-night feed, refresh, heart pounding. The timeline didn't add up. Kelsey had no full-time job, no side hustle I knew of beyond vague, freelance mentions. How was she funding this? The boutique's website listed prices that weren't cheap, hundreds for dresses, thousands in inventory, if the stock photos were real. I felt a sick twist in my stomach, but I pushed it down again. Maybe she had investors. Maybe she saved from the money I'd sent over the years. I told myself I was jumping to conclusions. The breaking point came one weekend when I drove out to Bryn Mawr for a quick visit. The house smelled like fresh paint and expensive candles. Mom greeted me with a hug that felt routine, then casually mentioned her monthly spa package was life-changing. Kelsey was upstairs on a video call laughing about her latest restock. I sat in the kitchen with Dad, who was flipping through golf magazines, and asked quietly if everything was okay financially. He waved it off. "We're fine thanks to you. Don't worry so much." That night, back in my apartment, I couldn't sleep. The voice in my head, the one I'd silenced for so long, grew louder. I needed answers. Not from them. From someone who could see clearly. I texted Taylor Vaughn the next morning. We'd been close since freshman year at Penn State, roommates, study partners, the kind of friend who knew your secrets without judgment. She was now a partner at a mid-sized firm in Center City specializing in estate planning and family law. I asked if she had time for coffee. She replied immediately, "Always for you. How about tomorrow at Reading Terminal Market, 11 a.m. We met at a small table near the coffee stand, surrounded by the bustle of vendors and tourists. I ordered black coffee. She got a latte. I started talking slowly at first, then everything poured out. 20 years of transfers. The initial crisis with Dad's job loss. The steady increase. The guilt trips when I hinted at slowing down. The social media flaunting. The illness that vanished overnight. Taylor listened without interrupting, her face calm but focused. When I finished, she leaned forward. "Mariah, let's look at the paperwork. Do you have access to the mortgage statements or the deed?" I pulled up my bank app and showed her the transfers, consistent, documented, totaling well over $300,000. She took notes on her phone. Then she asked about the house itself. I explained I'd co-signed the refinance 15 years ago when Dad's credit was shaky after the layoff. The bank required a co-signer for the lower rate, so my name went on the loan documents. But the deed, I wasn't sure. I'd never seen the final title papers. Taylor nodded. "In Pennsylvania, co-signing the mortgage makes you liable for the debt, but it doesn't automatically put you on the deed unless you were explicitly added as a grantee. Most family refinances keep the title in the original owner's names, your parents. That means you're not a legal owner on record. But here's where it gets interesting." She explained equitable interest under Pennsylvania law if one person contributes substantially to paying off a property owned by another, especially without compensation or agreement. Otherwise, the courts can recognize an equitable claim. It's not automatic title, but it creates a right to reimbursement or a share of the value. You've paid more than 80% of the mortgage over the years, plus repairs, utilities, improvements. That's not a gift. That's contribution. If it came to court, you could argue for a constructive trust, essentially the law saying the property is held in trust for you to the extent of your contributions, or at minimum equitable lien or reimbursement. She paused. "We need proof. Bank statements showing every transfer, mortgage payment history, any receipts for repairs or upgrades you funded, photos or posts showing their lifestyle funded by those same funds." We spent the next hour planning. Taylor would pull public records for the deed and mortgage history. I'd gather my record statements, emails, anything documenting the flow of money. She advised discretion, no confrontation yet. Build the case quietly. If they push for that property transfer agreement, we respond with facts, not emotion. I left the cafe feeling lighter but also heavier. For the first time, I had a name for what was happening. It wasn't just family duty. It was imbalance, exploitation. And now I had an ally who knew the law. I started compiling everything that night, downloading years of statements, screenshotting posts, noting dates. I didn't tell anyone. Not yet. The house in Bryn Mawr was no longer just home. It was evidence. The invitation came in a casual text from Mom a few days earlier. "Family dinner this weekend at the house. Thanksgiving style, even though it's not quite the holiday yet. Bring your famous apple pie if you can." I replied yes, as always. No questions, no hesitation. That's how it had been for years. I left Philadelphia early Saturday afternoon traffic light on the Schuylkill Expressway. The drive to Bryn Mawr took the usual 35 minutes past the city skyline, fading into tree-lined suburbs, the familiar exit sign for Lancaster Avenue appearing like clockwork. I stopped at a bakery in Ardmore for the pie, then pulled into the circular driveway of the house just as the sun dipped low. The place looked picture-perfect manicured lawn, fresh mulch in the flower beds, porch lights already on. I carried the pie and a bottle of red wine up the steps, knocked once out of habit, then walked in. The smell hit me first: roast turkey stuffing cinnamon from candles. Mom was in the kitchen apron on stirring gravy. Dad sat in his recliner watching football highlights. Kelsey came down the stairs in a new sweater, hair styled smiling wide. "Hey sis, you made it." Hugs all around, the usual small talk work going. "Okay, weather been crazy. How's the city?" We sat down at the long oak table in the dining room. Plates passed laughter at old stories. Kelsey dominated the conversation, showing photos on her phone of the boutique's latest shipment: silk blouses, leather bags, holiday ornaments. "Orders are through the roof," she said. "I might need to hire help soon." Dad nodded proudly. Mom beamed. "She's really making something of herself." I smiled, complimented the pieces, asked about suppliers. Inside, the knot from my meeting with Taylor tightened. I kept my face neutral. The meal flowed easily: turkey, moist potatoes, creamy green beans with almonds just right. We talked about neighborhood gossip, a new restaurant in Wayne, the Eagles season. No tension on the surface. I even relaxed a little, telling myself the doubts were overblown. After the main course plates cleared, coffee poured, Dad stood up. He tapped his glass with a spoon softly, but enough to quiet the room. Everyone looked at him. He cleared his throat. "I've been thinking a lot lately about legacy," he began. "About what we've built here, this home, this family. Your mother and I aren't getting any younger. We need to make sure things are in order. Simplify. Protect what's important." He reached under the table and pulled out a manila folder. Thick, official looking. He placed it in front of me and slid it across the polished wood. "These are property transfer agreement papers and a quitclaim deed," he said, voice steady but firm. "They transfer any potential interest you might have in this house to me and Kelsey. Clean title, no loose ends. It's the responsible thing. You've helped a lot over the years, Mariah, we appreciate it, but you've been relying on this family long enough. Time to make it official." The room went still. Not a fork clinked. Not a chair creaked. Mom stared at her coffee cup. Kelsey looked down at her lap, fingers twisting the napkin. I opened the folder. The language was dense: waiver of claims, release of equitable interests, full relinquishment of rights. Signatures required on every page. I read slowly, line by line, the way I'd been taught to read anything binding. My pulse stayed even. No shaking hands. No rush of anger visible on my face. Dad watched me. "It's generous, really. We're not asking for anything unreasonable. Just clarity." I lifted my eyes to meet his. Then Mom's. Then Kelsey's. No one spoke. I reached for the pen lying beside the folder. I signed. One page, then the next. And the next. Each signature deliberate, unhurried. When the last one was done, I closed the folder and pushed it back toward him. The silence stretched. Dad exhaled, almost relieved. "Thank you. This means a lot." That's when I felt the shift inside me, like a door locking quietly. I finished signing the last page and closed the folder with a soft snap. The sound echoed in the silence like a period at the end of a very long sentence. I slid it back across the table toward Dad. His fingers hesitated before taking it, as if the paper might burn him. Taylor Vaughn rose from her chair without hurry. She had been seated quietly at the far end, almost forgotten in the family tableau. Now she walked the length of the table, heels clicking on the hardwood floor, and placed the thick brown envelope directly in front of Dad. It landed with deliberate weight. "Before this evening concludes," she said, voice level and professional, "I believe you should review this material." Dad stared at the envelope as though it were a live thing. He glanced at Mom, then at Kelsey, then back at the package. Finally, he picked it up. His hands shook noticeably as he broke the seal and pulled out the stack of documents. The first items were bank statements, 20 years of them neatly clipped together. Highlighted lines showed every transfer from my account to theirs: monthly mortgage payments, property tax installments, utility bills, contractor invoices for the roof replacement in 2012, the kitchen remodel in 2015, the new HVAC system 2 winters ago. The total highlighted contributions exceeded $320,000. Next came photocopies of credit card statements, not theirs, mine. Charges circled in red spa packages at the Four Seasons in Philadelphia, totaling nearly $5,000 over 2 years. Airline tickets to Paris, London, Rome, first-class upgrades, luxury hotels, all booked under Kelsey's name, but paid from my account. Boutique inventory purchases, wholesale orders from fashion districts in New York and Los Angeles. Shipping labels addressed to the Bryn Mawr house, invoices matching the boutique's stock photos. Even a down payment on Kelsey's SUV, $22,000, wired directly from my savings. Taylor spoke again, calm but precise. "Under Pennsylvania law, Mariah has established a strong, equitable interest in this property. She has paid more than 80% of the mortgage principal and interest plus substantial improvements without any formal agreement for repayment or ownership transfer. The courts can and frequently do impose a constructive trust in cases of unjust enrichment. The property would be held in trust for her benefit to the extent of her contributions. Alternatively, she has grounds for an equitable lien or reimbursement judgment. If contested, a partition action could force sale and division of proceeds." She paused, letting the words settle. Dad's face drained of color. The papers trembled in his grip. Mom let out a small choked sound and pressed a napkin to her mouth. Kelsey stared at the tablecloth, cheeks burning, red fingers digging into the fabric. I leaned forward slightly. 20 years, I said quietly. I sent every dollar I could spare. I lived small so you could live large. And you used it for spa days, European vacations, a business Kelsey never earned. You told me it was for the house, for family. But it wasn't. I pointed to the bank statements. Every mortgage payment here came from my account. Every contractor check. You refinanced with my co-signature because your credit was damaged after the layoff. I made that possible. And in return, you asked me to sign away any claim tonight. You called it simplifying. You said I'd been eating off the family long enough. Dad opened his mouth, closed it. His throat worked. No sound came out. Mom whispered, "Mariah, we never meant what I asked. To take my money and spend it on yourselves. To let Kelsey build a business on my savings while telling me she was struggling. To cry on the phone every time I suggested slowing down so I could breathe." Kelsey lifted her head finally. Tears streaked her face, but she didn't wipe them. I thought it was okay," she stammered. "You always sent it. You never said no." "I never said no because I trusted you," I replied. "I trusted all of you. I believed the guilt trips were real fear. The sad messages were genuine worry. The illness was actual sickness. But it wasn't. It was a script." Dad dropped the papers. They scattered across the table like fallen leaves. We thought you'd always help," he said hoarsely. "You're the successful one. We raised you to take care of us." "You raised me to work hard," I said. "Not to be your ATM." Mom began to sob openly now. "Please, Mariah. We're family." "Family doesn't do this," I said. "Family doesn't hide luxury on my dime while making me feel like the burden." Taylor placed a hand lightly on my shoulder. The documents speak for themselves. If you'd like to discuss terms, fair reimbursement, perhaps a voluntary transfer of equity, we can do that through counsel. But tonight ends here. I stood up slowly. My chair scraped back. I'm done, I said. No more transfers. No more guilt. If you want to fight for this house, you'll fight in court. And the record will show exactly who paid for it. I turned and walked toward the front door. Taylor followed without a word. Behind me, the dining room remained frozen, Dad staring at the scattered papers, Mom crying into her napkin. Kelsey silent and small. The front door closed behind us with a soft click. The night air was cool against my skin. For the first time in 20 years, I breathed without the weight of their expectations pressing down. The door clicked shut behind us, sealing off the dining room like a vault. Taylor and I walked down the front steps in silence, the cool November air hitting my face. My coat was still inside. I hadn't bothered to grab it, but the chill felt good cleansing. I didn't look back. We got into Taylor's car parked at the curb. She started the engine without a word, pulled away from the curb, and headed toward Lancaster Avenue. The house shrank in the rearview mirror until it was gone. I stared straight ahead at the road. Tears came, then not loud sobs, but quiet ones that slid down my cheeks and dripped onto my lap. I didn't wipe them. I let them fall. 20 years of holding everything together, of believing the guilt was real, of choosing trust over truth. It all broke open in that moment. Taylor reached over and squeezed my hand once briefly. "You did the right thing," she said softly. "You said what needed to be said." I nodded, throat too tight for words. We drove in silence for a while, the streetlights of Bryn Mawr giving way to the darker stretches of the main line. When we hit the expressway ramp toward Philadelphia, Taylor spoke again. "First thing Monday we file partition action if they refuse to negotiate, or a complaint for unjust enrichment and constructive trust. The evidence is overwhelming: your transfers, the mortgage payments, the lifestyle spending traced back to your accounts. Pennsylvania courts don't look kindly on family members who exploit contributions like this. We've got the bank records, the credit card statements, the social media posts time-stamped to match. It's not even close." I finally found my voice. "I don't want the house," I said. "I want what's fair. Reimbursement for what I paid. Enough so they understand it wasn't free." Taylor nodded. "We'll ask for full accounting of every dollar. If they fight, the judge will order discovery. They'll have to produce their own records. That alone will force them to face what they've done." My phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out. Mom's name on the screen, then Dad's, then Kelsey's. Missed calls stacking up. Texts followed Mom. "Mariah, please come back. We need to talk." Dad. "This is a misunderstanding. Let's fix this as a family." Kelsey. "Sis, I'm sorry, I didn't know it would go this far." I stared at the messages. The tears slowed. Something hardened inside me. I went into settings. Blocked Mom. Blocked Dad. Blocked Kelsey. One by one. The screen went quiet. Taylor glanced over. "Good." We merged onto I-76. The city lights appeared ahead, Philadelphia glowing in the distance. My apartment waited there, small, but mine. No one else's bills. No one's expectations. I leaned my head against the window. "I thought family meant sacrifice," I said. "I thought if I gave enough, they'd love me enough back." Taylor kept her eyes on the road. "Family means mutual respect, not one person carrying everyone else while they spend." I closed my eyes. The road noise filled the car. For the first time in decades, my breathing felt even. No knot in my chest, no mental calculator running totals of how much I owed them. We reached Center City around 9. Taylor pulled up to my building on South Street. She turned off the engine and looked at me. "You okay to go up alone?" I nodded. "Yeah, thank you. For tonight. For everything." She smiled faintly. "Monday morning, 9 sharp. My office. Bring coffee." I got out, closed the door, watched her taillights disappear down the block. Inside my apartment, the quiet was different. Not lonely, peaceful. I dropped my keys on the counter, kicked off my shoes, and sat on the couch. No TV, no phone. Just the hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of traffic. I cried again, longer this time. For the girl who thought giving everything would make her indispensable. For the woman who'd finally seen the cost. When the tears stopped, I stood up. Walked to the bedroom. Pulled out a notebook I'd kept for years, lists of transfers, dates, amounts. I added tonight's date at the bottom. Then I closed it. No more lists. No more tracking. No more giving what wasn't returned. I slept that night without waking once. The next morning, the phone stayed silent. No voicemails, no new numbers trying to reach me. They had my decision. Monday came. I met Taylor at her office in the Rittenhouse Square area. She had the complaint drafted: claims for unjust enrichment, equitable lien, constructive trust accounting of funds. We reviewed every line. I signed. Filing was simple. Service would come soon. Weeks passed. Discovery requests went out. Their responses trickled in, partial, defensive, but undeniable. More statements surfaced: cruises booked on my card, jewelry purchases, home upgrades, not tied to mortgage principal. The numbers added up exactly as Taylor predicted. They tried mediation. I declined. The court date loomed. They settled before it arrived. Fair reimbursement, $280,000 plus interest. Not the full amount, I didn't ask for every cent, but enough to close the chapter. The check arrived certified mail. I deposited it, paid off my own debts, started a savings account with no one's name but mine. I never spoke to them again. The house in Bryn Mawr went on the market eventually. I saw the listing online one afternoon: professional photos, motivated sellers. I closed the tab. I kept driving past the exit sometimes on my way out of the city. But I never took it. Not anymore. The lawsuit moved quickly, as these things sometimes do when the evidence is overwhelming. Taylor filed the complaint in the Court of Common Pleas of Montgomery County, Pennsylvania, right after the holiday season. The claims were straightforward: unjust enrichment, imposition of constructive trust, equitable lien, and request for accounting. Attached were 300 pages of exhibits, bank transfer records spanning 20 years, mortgage payment histories showing my name on every check, credit card statements linking spa visits, European flights, and boutique inventory directly to my accounts, even screenshots of Kelsey's Instagram posts, timed to match large withdrawals. Service was completed within days. Their attorney responded with a motion to dismiss, claiming the transfers were voluntary gifts and no formal agreement existed. Taylor countered with case law. Pennsylvania recognizes equitable remedies when one party contributes substantially to another's property without compensation, especially in family contexts where undue influence or exploitation is alleged. She cited precedents like the equitable principles in cases involving adult children supporting parents, where courts have imposed trusts or liens to prevent unjust retention of benefits. Discovery followed. We requested their financials, tax returns, bank statements, boutique business records. They produced partial documents, but enough to confirm the pattern: luxury charges, no independent income for Kelsey, mortgage payments sourced almost entirely from me. Mediation was ordered. Their side proposed a small settlement, $50,000, and a vague apology. Taylor advised rejection. They still think they can lowball you, she said. Let them see the judge's face when the numbers are read aloud. The hearing came in early spring. The courtroom in Norristown was plain wood paneling, fluorescent lights, a judge who listened without expression. Taylor presented the timeline, my co-signature on the refinance, enabling the lower rate, my payments covering principal and interest for nearly 2 decades, the lifestyle upgrades funded by those same funds. The judge asked pointed questions. Their attorney stumbled on cross-examination when asked why no reimbursement had ever been offered. The ruling came 2 weeks later. The court recognized my equitable interest based on the substantial documented contributions. A constructive trust was imposed on the property to the extent of my payments toward principal and improvements. The judge ordered an accounting and reimbursement of $285,000 plus interest at the statutory rate. Partition was denied because sale wasn't yet necessary. The family could satisfy the judgment through other means or refinance, but the lien attached to the title. They appealed briefly, then withdrew. The check arrived certified mail in late June, $285,000 plus accrued interest. I deposited it the same day, paid off my remaining student loans, funded an emergency savings account, set aside a portion for Taylor's fees, though she took far less than she could have charged. The house in Bryn Mawr went on the market within weeks. I saw the listing on Zillow one afternoon while scrolling at lunch. Motivated sellers, spacious colonial in desirable mainline location. Professional photos showed the same rooms where we'd eaten dinner that night. The dining room table polished, the backyard landscaped. The price had dropped twice already. Mom tried one last time. A handwritten letter arrived at my apartment, her neat cursive on plain stationery. Mariah, we never wanted this. We love you. Please come home so we can talk. I read it once, folded it, and placed it in the recycling bin. No reply. Kelsey closed the boutique. The Instagram account went dark. Last I heard through a mutual acquaintance, she was working retail in King of Prussia, struggling to cover rent on a small apartment. Dad took a part-time job at a hardware store. Mom stopped posting about spa days. I cut contact completely. No social media follows, no holiday cards, no updates. The silence was the cleanest break. Months later, on a clear October afternoon, I drove out of Philadelphia for a work meeting in King of Prussia. The route took me past the Lancaster Avenue exit for Bryn Mawr. I hadn't planned to go there, but the exit sign appeared, and something made me take it. I turned onto the familiar streets, past the old stone churches, the tree-lined lanes, the manicured lawns. The house came into view on the left. A red and white for sale sign stood in the front yard, swinging gently in the breeze. The porch lights were off in daylight, curtains drawn. No cars in the driveway. I slowed the car to a stop at the curb. Engine idling, I sat there for a long minute. The house looked smaller than I remembered. Ordinary. Just another property on the market. I didn't feel anger. Not really. Not anymore. I felt free. I put the car in drive and continued down the street. At the next intersection, I turned toward the expressway ramp. Philadelphia waited ahead, the skyline rising as I approached the city lights already flickering on in the early dusk. I never looked back. That house had been a place of duty, of obligation, of one-sided sacrifice. It was never truly mine, even when I paid for it. Letting it go wasn't loss, it was release. Today, I live in the same small apartment on South Street, but it feels larger. I travel when I want short trips to the Jersey Shore, weekends in New York. I meet friends for dinner without calculating costs. I date occasionally, no longer carrying the invisible weight of family responsibilities. Taylor and I grab coffee regularly. She's become more than a lawyer. She's proof that real support doesn't come with strings. I've learned something hard but essential: love isn't measured by how much you give when others take. Family isn't defined by blood or shared address. It's built on mutual respect, honesty, and reciprocity. When those are missing, the healthiest choice is distance. Not revenge, not bitterness, just boundaries. Sacrificing everything for people who won't sacrifice for you doesn't make you noble. It makes you depleted. If you're reading this and recognizing yourself someone who has given until empty, who has been guilted into staying, know this: you are allowed to stop. You are allowed to choose yourself. The guilt will scream loudest right before it fades. On the other side is quiet, space, freedom. I found mine, and I never looked back.